Hello and welcome to SV Li Ban. We are a Macgregor 26X from Calgary, Alberta, and this is our trip to the Shuswap Lake in BC 2020. The Shuswap is a really neat lake in south central BC. It's known for warm weather and water that supports a well-developed houseboating industry. There are two major urban centers on the lake, Salmon Arm on the west and Sicamous on the east, Sicamous being the area where most of the houseboating operations are based out of. The Shuswap consists of 4 arms. The first is named the Shuswap Lake, though this is also the name for the entire lake system. Seymour Arm, Anstey Arm, and Salmon Arm are the others. Some would consider Mara Lake an arm as well, as it's only separated from the rest of the water by a bridge. Near the boat launch, there's this really neat pier that extends into the water. I didn't get a chance to walk down it myself, but the photos online are great, and it makes it look like a really welcoming place for both boaters and water enthusiasts alike. Another really interesting thing is that there's turtles living in the boat launch area. I found this quite surprising, being that it's in the middle of British Columbia, but there were dozens of them just living in the lagoon. This is my dad, Jim. And that's me, Kevin. It was really cool to be able to do this trip with my dad. He's from the Kootenays, and it's cool for him to return home and do some sailing on one of his local lakes, so to speak. I'd never been to the Shuswap before. It was a new experience for myself, but for my dad, it was very much old hat. He'd been here before, done that. The trees to me were big and amazing. To him, they were just the trees he grew up with. When we were out sailing, one thing we noticed that was kind of surprising was all these dead moths in the water. Not in just one area, but all over the place, and thousands and thousands and thousands of them. I don't know if this is an annual occurrence or if there was some unique environmental effect this year, but it was kind of surprising. To reach this beach, we had to leave the dock through a narrow channel. It wasn't particularly difficult to navigate, and we had the information available on our software, Navionics, which I'll mention later. Nonetheless, it was something we needed to be prudent of. We sailed up the lake, around the corner, and to this beach, where we anchored for the evening. Turns out on the Shuswap, you can beach your boat pretty much wherever you like. At first I was pretty nervous about this, but other boats were doing it, and it never did seem to be much of a problem. The beach we found was part of this campground, and we'd actually return here at the end of our trip for a brief hike. On the second day, we left the beach and headed up around the corner. This was actually the only day that we did any sailing. The wind was quite calm, and we didn't really have many opportunities to do any. I get the sense that the Shuswap is typically a calm lake and not well suited for sailboats like mine. It was mostly pontoon boats, and of course many houseboats. The beach we ended up at was, unaware to us, the final destination for most of the houseboating groups. It was the staging area before they went back to the docks the next day, and thus was the de facto party night for the cruisers. If you're into loud music and drinking, probably a great scene for you. Wasn't really what me and my dad were into, but it didn't bother us too much. The next day was a really nice motor up the channel to the confluence of the four arms of the Shuswap Lake. There's actually a campground here with some nice infrastructure. Particularly useful to us was a set of docks. There's also many campgrounds here for people who wish to camp in tents. At this point in the trip, the smoke from the wildfires was really starting to set in. You can see that sharp line of the smoke as it makes its way down the mountains ahead. It's hard to remember that there is mountains all around us at this point. The next day we'd find the smoke so bad that we wouldn't be able to see through it. We would be at one point so far from each shore that we couldn't see either of them. In this area, you would also find the Shuswap Shark Shack, a floating restaurant in the middle of the water. Unfortunately, it wasn't there during our trip. I was kind of looking forward to going there. But oh well, these things happen. You can see at this point, the smoke is rolled in so thick, only a portion of the mountain is visible. And soon, we wouldn't even be able to see that. The final leg of our trip took us from the confluence of the four arms back to the beach we were on the first day. There was a nice hike we heard about when we first visited the beach, up to Waterfall, and we decided we wanted to do that. While sailing certainly has its moments of excitement, I find the majority of it to be quite peaceful, serene. I have many good memories of hanging out in the cockpit with my dad, just watching the water go by. The navigation software we use is called Navionics. It's probably the most popular software for navigating for cruisers. It's very user-friendly and very cost-effective. We run it on a $200 Android tablet with a protective case, and the software costs, I think, about $100 a year. We've already shown this software once at the beginning when we showed the small channel we had to navigate through near the boat launch. The software shown on the screen is actually the website version. The tablet version actually shows you where your boat is, as well as your heading, speed, and lots of other useful information. You can even plot a course in there, and it'll give your estimated time of arrival. This first part of the hike was not even part of the trail. This was just walking through the campground. It's beautiful, isn't it? This is the start of the trail. As you can see, it's well maintained, it's flat, easy to traverse. We even saw people with strollers. It was particularly interesting seeing all the fallen trees. They were stable enough, it wasn't a dangerous situation, but it was still rather ominous feeling. Very impactful and epic. They were all the way up the canyon. And interestingly, on the way back down, the experience of seeing the trees from the other side was significantly different than on the way up. One of the aspects about sailing that I appreciate the most is the unplanned, unscripted, happen chance moments. We never planned on going on this hike, but we decided to, and we didn't know these piles of rocks were halfway up the hike. But for some reason, it was one of the most fulfilling parts of the hike. I don't know who started them, I don't know if there's some deeper significance to them, but clearly someone, or probably many people, have spent a lot of time building these little rock cairns, or in some case, inukshuks. It was just a cool, quirky little aside from the hike that we were doing up to the falls. I'm not sure what our four-legged friend found, but he was very interested in whatever was below the bridge. We crossed many bridges on the way up to the falls. They were all in good repair. Who doesn't love standing on a bridge, looking down at the water? It seems fitting to conclude this video with a shot of the falls at the top of the hike. The final day was rather uneventful. We ended up taking the boat back to the boat launch, putting it back on the trailer and heading home. We had a little bit of car trouble on the way home, but nothing we couldn't handle. All in all, this was one of the best trips I've ever done. It was great to spend time with my dad. It was great to see the Shuswap and its beautiful warm waters. I would definitely go again, and I would definitely suggest it to anybody who has the ability to visit the area. If you can do it by boat, all the better.